Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer Quick Match gameplay. This time around, this is going to be a double video. I will be going over the Wood Elf versus Chaos matchup. This is the first game I'll be showing is against the Warriors of Chaos, led by Selbst Mord PvP. On the map, Karak Buftar playing as the Wood Elves. And of course he's playing as Chaos. So right off the bat, I'm going to go in slow-mo. So Chaos doesn't have much, so this was with the conventional build. And I wanted to make a build that could contest Chaos on normal close quarters terms. Chaos does tend to bring a lot of Chaos Warriors. Their other options are, of course, there's the possibility of Chosen and Forsaken, which are probably the most potent option against Wood Elves. And against those, the Elves are definitely a bit weak. There's not too much they have that can shut down Forsaken. But I did try to set up a build here that could at least contest Forsaken, give them a run for their money, and still take on most of what the Chaos could bring. Obviously, there's a risk that your opponent just brings hordes of Chaos Marauders, which could swarm all this heavy armor-piercing infantry, but I'm still hoping that with my fairly high-quality army, I should be able to hold the ground against them and break them with rear charges from Wild Riders if it really does come to that. So, for my army, running the Glady as usual, with Brave Hand of Threma, Arrows of Kurnus, and the Potion of Toughness just to cut down on cost, not running a Potion of Foolhardiness. Branch Wraith, of course, with all the buffs, Scroll Protection, the Withering to reduce enemy armor, make him a little more vulnerable, and of course Earthblood, that is basically mandatory. A front line of Eternal Guard, just to give me some fairly tough, high melee defense, armor-piercing infantry. I want as much armor-piercing as possible against Chaos, and that is definitely a big rule. 2 units of Wildwood Rangers, just kind of to stiffen up my front against any sort of Chaos infantry. And then, of course, 2 War Dancers out here on the flanks, ready to come in from the sides. War Dancers with Azrai Spears, of course, or shut down enemy cavalry if they decide to come in from my archers. I also have 2 units of Wild Riders all the way out on the flanks, ready to come in for cycle charges into my opponent's rear, and just scout out if he brings anything, any fast units, that sort of thing. And then, of course, my ranged contingent, which is 3 units of Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts. They are fairly cheap and dish out a lot of hurt. They have armor piercing, they have magic, they have fire. So they can just do a lot of damage to Chaos very, very quickly. And as long as you can keep them safe, they will definitely can lay down the hurt on most Chaos armies. And give me quite a few strong options. Now, my opponent actually did something a little unexpected from my perspective. He brought a lot of Chosen. He brought a front line of 5 Chosen, which was a bit terrifying because I didn't really have... Although I had a lot of armor piercing, Chosen are very, very tanky. They have a lot of HP per model. And a lot of armor, and a lot of weapon strength, melee defense, and melee attack. They're definitely really strong, definitely one of the strongest infantry in the game. And they are backed up by Chaos Sorcerer of Death, who I'm already sniping at, who does have Fate of Buna, Purple Sun of Zerus, and Spirit Leech. Sigvald, over here on foot, of course, bring that Auric armor, and stand your ground. And 3 units of Chaos Warriors with Halberdiers, and Aspiring Champions, just who are actually veteraned up to veteran rank 6 or 7. So that'll definitely stiffen up that front line, make it much tougher for me to break. And Chaos Warriors with Halberds in the back will make it very difficult for me to get much done with my Wild Riders. Now I'm trading Spirit Leech here for Arrow Fire into the Chaos Warriors of Death, trying to pull off like a quick kind of gank on him. I'm going to throw into full normal speed. Unfortunately, I don't think I traded particularly efficiently here. I do take probably quite a bit more hurt on my Glady than my opponent took on his Sorcerer. That is a little unfortunate. Definitely not what I'd been hoping for. In the meantime, though, I'm realizing that I'm not really able to force my opponent to come to me. If I don't push towards him, I advance to the base of this hill to give my Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts the potential to shoot up. I'm definitely counting on the Branch Wraith to help stiffen up my front line, to help me break through the Chosen's otherwise huge melee defense, and whittle them down. Fortunately, the Eternal Guard have terrible melee attacks, so they're not going to have a good time of it no matter what I do. As you can see, my Starfires, unfortunately, I didn't have their auto-fire turned off, and that was definitely my first mistake, and that means the initial damage is spread out. And that's really not something I can be affording with how high the Chosen's HP is. But fortunately, for my second volley, I've already focused on this unit of Chosen. Yes, they have Silver Shields, they have boatloads of HP per model, but I'm realizing I have to try to burn through one unit and just focus fire on them. And unfortunately, Chaos Sorcerer of Death was not in immediate range. He does drop a Spirit Leech on the Branch Wraith, which I do think is a bit of a waste, because the Branch Wraith is going to be in the middle of the melee and getting boosted by heals. And taking advantage of the fact that Chaos Warriors and with Halberds are very, very slow, I push into the flank real quick with Wild Riders. They're not going to do a lot of damage, but they can do some morale damage. Get into my opponent's flank, hurt him a little bit, time downs, try to separate and stretch out this engagement in the front. In the meantime, I'm trying to sneak these Wild Riders forward a little bit, being cautious. And now that the actual fight is beginning to generate, I'm pushing all my units forward, hoping to engage my opponent right at the front. Unfortunately, Fate of Buna does go down against the Wildwood Rangers. Very potent spell, as we saw in one of my own Chaos replays, and of course, visible whenever someone uses that spell. Just very ridiculous. Does lots of damage. But with the so they're very quickly burning through these Wild Rangers. But my front line, as you can see, is holding fairly well, and I'm starting to shift these Wild Riders in. I'm dropping a Arrow of Kurnus down on this Chaos Sorcerer of Death, trying to pick him off. And my Azrai Spears are, in fact, very, very powerful in close quarter combat against Elder Infantry, even though they are specializing against large. And as you can see, they're absolutely destroying these Chaos Warriors with halberds, especially with all the Starfire shafts coming in. And I'm hoping to wrap up this flank and then push into my opponent's rear. Unfortunately, my center is absolutely getting destroyed. I did pop a Withering to lower my opponent's leadership and his armor. And now I'm trying to get these Wild Riders into my opponent's rear, get him on the Chaos Sorcerer of Death, who I did drop a Brave Anathrame on, and I'm shooting down. And these Wild Riders are going to charge into the back of these Halberdiers. Now, something important to consider with Wild Riders, even though they don't have armor piercing, they're the only unit in my army that does not come out with armor piercing, besides my Lady, and I guess the Branch Wraith, actually, but the only regular unit I have. They cause Fear, and they have Frenzy. And all Chaos units, with the exception of Forsaken, while Frenzied, all Chaos Infantry is susceptible to Fear and Psychology, including Chosen. So I'm definitely hoping to abuse this Fear mechanic to sort of break my opponent's back with rear charges. Unfortunately, my Glade Riders here do get caught a bit by the Halberds, and but I'm trying to just force path them through my infantry line, get them out of dodge as quickly as I can. Over here, in the meantime, these Wild Riders have kind of gotten surrounded and Chosen. With the help of the War Dancers, who have ridiculous melee defense, they are holding very well. The War Dancer to Chosen Slugfest, although definitely favoring the Chosen in the long run, is not going to be a quick win for the Chosen by any means at all. And the Wildwood Rangers are definitely in there to help and do some damage as well. Starfire Shaft's just chewing at my opponent's line. He does bust Sigvald through, and Sigvald is now going for my archers, which is a bit of a problem for me, but he can't shut them all down, and I'm still peppering his infantry down. And now as my opponent does break through my center and kind of start wrapping around my flank, he will start exposing his Chosen and his Aspiring Champions and all those units to rear fire from the Starfire Shafts. And unfortunately, my opponent, I do think, makes a bit of a mistake here, and he pushes Sigvald back into the melee, trying to go after my Branch Wraith, which is understandable, but, and as you can see, I dropped another Arrow of Kurnus there. But, that is, I think, a bit of a mistake, because it exposes him to all this flanking fire. Whenever you get this sort of mosh pit, it exposes you to rear charges, it exposes you to archer fire. His shields, his silver shields would normally protect him really well, especially his Aspiring Champion is Chosen, but now they are not. They're simply getting melted by the crossfire from the archers. Over here, the Chosen are definitely holding very well against this War Dancers, but once again, the War Dancers are a much cheaper investment. Now they're going to be backed by Eternal Guard, and that should be good enough. My opponent's morale is holding fairly steady. He does drop a Spirit Leech on my Lady, but now I am turning up on his Chaos Sorcerer of Death, put an arrow into him, and he is going to simply rout. I do believe one more shot will do it. And I do finally pop my Potion of Toughness, starting to heal. My infantry, as you can see, is absolutely falling apart, but so is my opponent's infantry. These Chosen are slowly getting swarmed all over between the War Dancers, who are still less unhealthy, and the Eternal Guard, who are definitely holding their own for a little bit. And this really only leaves my opponent with Sigvald, who has popped center die, but that's not going to do anything for him against the Glade Guard Starfire Shafts, and all the rest of his army is routing now. With a mix of the Fear, the Glade does cause Fear even just from being nearby, and now I'm sending the Wild Riders, who are very badly beaten, but we're sending him in to sort of pursue my opponent. Both our armies kind of snapped and broke here, but they are healthy enough to... My troops are deciding to stay just for a little bit, and I'm definitely hoping to exploit that and beat off these units. And I'm making sure that these guys stay broken, sending my Lady on to pursue his infantry. I don't want him coming back. I'm not too concerned about Sigvald. My archers are basically out of ammo. They are just ran out of ammo. And Sigvald does not do well against groups. So yeah, he can shoot through my Starfire Shafts. That's okay. That's an acceptable loss at this point. And I'm simply planning to force the rest of his army off and then come back and swarm him with my largely crippled and melee army. As you can see, Sigvald is not doing amazing against the archers, and now he gets hit by an Arrow of Kurnus. Probably does more friendly fire than anything else, but definitely did pretty well there. So a very tight match, very, very close. My front line completely buckled in that exchange, but I think there were a few things definitely to see there. I'm just going to go really quickly over the endgame stats. I did, of course, bring a larger army than my opponent. He got very good use out of his Chaos Sorcerer of Death. Basically, all of the things that he had that could have an effect definitely helped. I'm not sure how this army would have stood up to a Horde of Forsaken, but given my high amounts of armor piercing, my Wild Riders there to cause fear and rear charges, and Forsaken aren't particularly good against cavalry. The Branch should stiffen up that front line, and the Glady, I think, could have stood a chance against the Forsaken mob. And against the Chosen, even though they're very strong infantry, they take a very long time to chew through Eternal Guard with shields, through Wildwood Rangers, and through War Dancers with spears. And the Chaos Warriors with halberds will simply not be able to win against War Dancers with Azrae's Wildwood Rangers, and they won't do amazing against the Eternal Guard just because it takes them a while to shoot through. As you can see, the Eternal Guard didn't do a lot of hurt, but they definitely held their ground. And because I got all that work done with the Starfire Shafts, as you can see, these guys did a really good work there. I was able to simply eventually break my opponent by keeping him tied down in place with a fairly sturdy front line and burning him down with Starfire Shafts. Definitely don't underestimate the low-end Elven Infantry. I do generally showcase their, take advantage of their higher-end stuff, like Swift Shards, Scouts, and Way Watchers, and Waystalkers occasionally, but definitely don't underestimate Lady Order Starfire Shafts. Yeah, my opponent engaged very solidly, basically won the infantry fight, but ended up breaking to the Pix of Fear. Definitely don't underestimate Fear on Wild Riders. Very powerful ability. And the Fear on the Branch Wraith, of course. Who unfortunately did die to Sigvald. So there was another replay I did want to show real quick, if I can find it, which was fairly recent as well, and this was another replay against Chaos, and I wanted to show this one. Mostly just to show an alternative build. I just want to showcase some different builds that you can run with Wood Elves against Chaos. Now, I did forget to mention this in the last one, but the reason I'm running Wild Riders without shields is largely because you don't really need shields against Chaos. Chaos might bring skirmishers, they can, but it's not likely against Wood Elves because Wood Elves is such a strong skirmish core. So this match starts very quickly, and as you can see, this is one of my somewhat trollish kiting builds. I'm actually going to pause it because I'm already opening fire on my opponent's Forsaken. I got the jump really quickly there. Now I'm running once again Glady on an Eagle. This time though I did get the potion of full hardiness on her. 4 units of Waystalkers, of course, or Way Watchers, spread out over here just to bring armor piercing. I'm not bothering with Deepwood Scouts with Swift Shivers. If my opponent does bring a lot of Marauders, which I don't think is too likely against Wood Elves because Wood Elves have some pretty solid anti-light infantry units, I'm simply really going to rely on my Wild Riders to deal with them with cycle charging. 2 Waystalkers, once again to do that nice single target damage, whittle down gun crews, fire without being revealed. Just very strong in single targets. 2 more units of Wild Riders over 1 unit of Wild Riders over here on the flank just to bring that fear, bring out some delaying power against enemy heavy cav or quick infantry, and out here on the flank on the left 2 units of Wild Riders just backing up, and of course the Branch Wraith, which is something this time around I actually didn't bother because obviously I'm not having bringing much melee, and the only melee I do have is very quick, so the Branch Wraiths are likely to be left behind. I didn't bother with the Call of the Wild, so no bonus to melee attack. Simply bringing Malkuth's Miasma just to slow my opponent's units down if they try to pursue me. Earthblood, Smoke and Mirrors, and a Scroll of Protection. So without further ado, starting the game up immediately. Actually, let's throw in slow-mo real quick. My opponent brought a very Forsaken heavy army. This is definitely the sort of army I was worried about when I built this. A very Forsaken heavy build. Now, my opponent is running 4 units of Forsaken. Actually 5 units of Forsaken, backed up by 2 units of Chaos Warriors with great weapons who could definitely shoot through armor. Of course, Forsaken are amazing against Elven Infantry. A unit of Chaos Knights with Lances who are definitely a bit worried about. They will do very well against any sort of Elven Cavalry, and they will butcher Elven Infantry. Chaos Sorcerer of Death on a Manticore, which I think is a bit questionable. It does mean you can get easy shots off, but or it does mean he can fairly easily fly around and get a good Fate of Buna or Spirit Leech off, but at the same time it does make him susceptible to arrow fire. Kolek the Sun Eater, once again a bit of a strange choice I think, but he can definitely plow through Elven Infantry, and he has Terror, which is definitely a bit terrifying. And I do believe he has he does have Stormcaller, so that could definitely level my infantry. And of course a Hell Cannon. Now definitely artillery is one of the big counters to Wood Elves if you aren't able to stay on your toes, because it can absolutely devastate your infantry. Or any of your units really, because they're so squishy and they aren't able to snipe it down. Now I immediately opened fire on the Forsaken. The moment that the game started, I opened fire. My opponent was a little slow to react. And now another important thing when you're using Way Watchers or any sort of kiting units, whether those be Way Watchers, whether those be Waystalkers. Waystalkers stay hidden usually when firing unless they're too close to your opponent, or Swift Shiver Shards. Any of those units is do not stay continuously firing. Definitely don't stay in one spot. But honestly, don't stay firing. It's definitely a easy mistake to make, but your units can recloak in between volleys if you make sure to dart. So make sure you keep darting in and out of stealth. That'll screw with your opponent's artillery fire. That'll screw with their their skirmisher fire, meaning that they have a much harder time shutting down your Way Watchers or your scouts or whatever it is. So dart in and out of invisibility. Now I do see these knights coming in, and unfortunately I wasted 3 or so volleys in the Chaos Sorcerer of Death. Did some damage, but not enough really. Hell Cannon Shot does go in, only hits one of the Way Watchers. Spirit Leech is going in on my Glady. That's acceptable, and I do try to slow down the Chaos Knights with Lances. Unfortunately I was definitely too slow on the draw here, and so I'm trying to pull my Wild Riders out here save my Weight Watchers, but it's a little too late. They are going to get charged. My opponent just bypasses the Way Stalker, bypasses the Glady, but he is taking a bunch of crossfire from the Weight Watchers. My Weight Watchers take a massive hit here, and this other unit will take a little bit of damage from the Hell Cannon, but the arrow fire is enough to cause the Chaos Knights to waver and now break. And my opponent should have really been pushing in with his Forsaken, but doesn't. And that might have been a lapse of micro. But I'm not entirely sure that with the Wild Riders here, I would have probably been able to shut them down and slow them down anyway, I think. Now, I do pepper down the Chaos Knights, and I do send, seeing that my opponent is being passive with his infantry, I do send the Wild Riders to shut down his Chaos Knights, make sure they never come back. I'm keeping Wild Riders up here on top of the Weight Watchers, keeping them safe, and I'm trying to snipe down this Chaos Sorcerer of Death, drop a pair of Anathrame on him, and now I'm just staying exposed to enemy fire, of course, but just decided to kill this Sorcerer as quickly as I can. I don't want any more Fate of Bunos going down like the one that hit these Weight Watchers. I simply decided that I'm going to kill this Chaos Sorcerer and not let him come back. Now, the Hell Cannons are hitting pretty hard, but it is important to keep in mind that Elven Skirmish Infantry, and honestly most Elven Infantry in general, except for really Eternal Guard, kind of dries because and Wildwood Rangers, but most Elven Infantry, actually Glade Guard as well, but most of the high-end Elven Infantry fights in very loose formation, which while it makes it very hard to stop charges from, say, cavalry, with them, it makes them very, very difficult for artillery to whittle down. Like, the Hell Cannon's not really, even with its fairly large splash and guided projectiles, is not able to take off enough models off these Weight Watchers. It's been taking off like especially because it's not being manually aimed by my opponent. So it's taking about 2 or 3 models with each hit, which really isn't enough, given how expensive a unit is. Now, my opponent makes another bit of a mistake here, or maybe not a mistake, realizing that he's kind of hasn't been able to close the gap on me. He decides to start pulling back, and this I think might have been a bit of a mistake. He might have been better off trying to push it to me, but without shields it's definitely very difficult to try to deal with the Weight Watchers. I'm shifting the Wild Riders around. I don't want them taking hits from the artillery. And I don't want them being too close to the Weight Watchers giving away. And now all my arrow fire is coming in on the Hell Cannon, which has been left exposed in the open, and my opponent isn't able to pull it back. It's simply too slow, so it's dying very quickly. You can see the poor guys, poor dwarves over there getting peppered with arrows, staggering, and shortly they're just going to be dispatched. It is important to try to keep your Weight Watchers at max range if possible, or at longer range if possible, because they get a bonus to their armor piercing damage with Hawkish Precision. So do Way Stalkers. If they get a significant bonus to their AP damage, 25%, if they are over 70 meters away from their opponent. And so this Hell Cannon goes down. I'm pushing my Wild Riders forward, knowing that my opponent doesn't have any more shooting left, but I'm being very cautious. I don't want to let my Weight Watchers get jumped, and I'm trying to keep max distance away from my opponent. I do pull this Branch Wraith in just to heal up this force a little bit, and I'm pushing these Wild Riders up to the flank, preparing to try to encircle my opponent. I was expecting my opponent to stick around here and just kind of fight me, but he decides to fall back to the tree line, which is right on the map edge, so definitely a bit risky, because if there's a route, it's going to be a total collapse. And here I'm just simply trying to pick out his units, using my Glady to fire away at the fleeing troops. And here I drop a pair of Anathrame on the Chaos Warriors, who are at the tail end of this formation. And once again, this is sort of like against some of the more cheesier builds with Empire. You don't want to separate your force, and this, of course, is a forced separation. But the fact that my opponent's army was falling back, and this slow unit was just being caught on the far end here, doesn't mean that it's just going to get absolutely annihilated. These Chaos Warriors do take a hit from the Arrow of Kurnus, because I'm not going to waste that on these Chaos Warriors. Are almost dead already. They're breaking, and now the Wild Riders are moving in to deliver the coup de grace and finish them off. Similarly, the Glady with Fear, of course, is coming in. And like I've said before, the Chaos Warriors, all Chaos Infantry except Forsaken, while there's Frenzies up, are not immune to Psychology. These guys do shatter, and my Wild Riders come in to attack them. My opponent does turn these Chaos Warriors around, perhaps hoping to get some kills in. I'm not sure if I lose a model here, these Wild Riders. I don't. They don't get caught. I pull back and just leave these guys to be shattered and flee. I'm trying to be very conservative with my ammo at this stage. So you can see some of my Weight Watchers are very low on shots at this point, and I can't really afford to lose the run out of ammo. These guys did get Earthblood cast. Unfortunately, that wasn't a perfect cast by any means, despite the fact that I had all the time in the world to make it a good cast, and so only one unit got healed up. Now these Wild Riders are slowly being pushed forward, and this is something I really should have done before. This is definitely a bit of a mistake. I'm going to push them forward very, very shortly. This is something I should have done a while ago, because it definitely exposes my skirmishers to my counter charge if my opponent had decided to do so. Now I'm firing the Arrows of Kurnus at Kolek, because I'm thinking that at this stage, with my opponent being bunkered down in the woods, I don't have enough ammo to whittle him down unit by unit. Only my Weight Watchers do still have some ammunition, about a third, if I average it out between all of them, it's probably about a third of their shots, maybe a little less. And of course, they don't have the full unit count anymore. So my plan is basically to try to kill Kolek and then charge in with the Wild Riders, charge in with the Glady and Brain Wraith, and then whatever Way Stalkers, Way Watchers, all that sort of stuff, and force a break on my opponent's army, force a morale check. And because they're so close to the edge, they'll be forced to retreat. But definitely the woods is helping my opponent stay alive here. It might have been a good idea for my opponent to back off there earlier, though also aggression could have been good as well. Now first I picked the Forsaken though, because they're a very weak unit. So I decided to try to delete them and then leave. Initially I didn't really have confidence in my ability to kill Kolek, so I go after the Forsaken here, who were already beat up from that opening volley. And they're being killed off rather quickly, as you can see. I'm going to throw it into fast forward. There's a bit of poking here. I do charge close with the Wild Riders and then decide to back off. And now I do run out of ammunition on some. I'm starting to run out of ammunition on some of the Way Stalkers. Definitely some of the Way Watchers are running low. And I'm just poking around with the Wild Riders, trying to get some intel. Make sure I'm keeping my opponent tied down and a little worried. And I do finally decide to tear through Kolek. As you can see, there's arrow fire coming in from all sides. And his HP is dropping very quickly. Arrows of Kurnus are easily hitting him and just tearing through him. He has no source of self-sustain. Chaos troops obviously don't have any sort of regen. And now I hit him with a Prey of Anathrema, and he gets absolutely annihilated by all that Way Watcher fire. Now I'm going in for really for the finishing blow for my opponent's army, charging in from all sides with Wild Riders. Over here, the Wild Riders dart in, and I immediately pull them out after baiting these Forsaken out of position. Forsaken are very quick, so they can reposition fairly quickly, but not quick enough. Kolek has gone down. He's dead. My Wild Riders over here get a Scroll of Shielding popped on him. Earthblood's going down. They're tying down these Forsaken. They are not ideal against Forsaken or Chaos Warriors because they simply don't have a lot of armor. A lot of their damage comes from that Frenzy. And in a long fight, they can definitely be attrition down. But with a little bit of arrow fire coming in, Melkoth's Mystify Asthma does a little bit of damage to the Forsaken. My Glady comes in with Fear, pops Potion of Toughness, Potion of Foolhardiness just to stay alive. And I get a rear charge in with these Wild Riders. That's definitely something you have to be watch out for when you're encircling an enemy Lord. And now another Earthblood goes down, because I actually had a lot of Winds of Magic left over. But that's something you have to be very cautious with when you're encircling an enemy Lord, is the fact that your blob can very easily become a target for a rear charge. And that is the end of that replay. So those were two somewhat lengthy replays, I admit. But I do hope they show you a few different Elven strategies to deal with Chaos, and even if Chaos runs one of the harder counter builds, let's say Forsaken. If you're running a kiting build with Wood Elves, be very cautious about darting in and out of invisibility. You don't want to show your hand immediately, or constantly be revealing your units. Fire volley, vanish. Fire volley, vanish. If they decide to send units after you, that's when you can whittle them down. I definitely made some mistakes there, and the Wild Riders were too far away to reinforce the Way Watchers, but I was able to make pretty good use of the Way Watchers, just picking out my opponent. And the fact that they were darting in and out of vision meant that my opponent ended up firing at the handful of units that he could see with his Hell Cannon. It definitely helped shut that source of damage down. So definitely something to keep in mind. Wood Elf skirmishers are very strong, but Wood Elves can definitely go toe-to-toe with enemies with a standard close quarters build with some ranged fire support, as you saw in the previous video. So there's definitely a lot of strategies you can try, and I think both of these strategies are pretty viable. There might be a handful of things I would change here and there in loadout. I think that a Glady on a Dragon could also be decent because of the terror mechanic, rather than simply fear from the Eagle. It definitely makes you much better in close quarters. But yeah, definitely. And I think the Branch Wraith is almost a must, no matter what you do. I do know that Spellslingers are rather popular, but the Branch Wraith does give you that mix, and the Branch Wraith doesn't give you any super powerful spells like, say, Occam's Mind Razor or Pit of Shades. But the fact that it comes in and it can give you that boost to all the melee units, it gives you a replacement Lord on the ground with Encourage, and it gives you Earthblood and Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma or Withering, or it has a lot of different options to bring that you can help bring to the field. I think that definitely makes the Branch Wraith a worthwhile pick, no matter what elf build you're really running. It can just do so many things very well. So I do hope you guys enjoyed. I do know it's been a lot of elves recently, and I will hopefully do videos on something new. I'll definitely be moving to other factions, trying to mix things up a little bit. But I did want to share these two replays, show you guys some gameplay. I do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like or subscribe down below. I do appreciate you all for watching, and Wyvern out.